YouTube, my name is Tim Mason, and today I'm bringing you a PO NU match I had on the Smogon server against a person named Failsafe, and yeah, it was a pretty fun match. I enjoyed it, so I decided I would upload it, and yeah, this is my first upload. Hooray for me. Anyways, I'm just going to read the teams out loud. Okay, my team consists of Sock, a Miltank, a Mesprit, a Tauros, a, what's it called, a Zipstrika, and an Altaria. While his team consists of a Nontoot, Skunktank, Swellow, Camerupt, Cradley, Quagsire, and yeah. So the threats I'm looking at are the Camerupt, the Nontoot, the Cradley, the Quagsire, and the Swellow, so kind of half his team. Nontoot's going to be annoying because I'm not going to be able to status things freely or set up my rocks, but I should be able to handle it with Sock with a Stone Edge, or Tauros with Rock Climb, even Zipstrika, or obviously Zipstrika with a Thunderbolt. Cradley I can handle with Sock and possibly Zipstrika because it has Overheat, even though it only does neutral, but still. Camerupt I have Tauros and Sock for, and Quagsire, really the only thing I have is Zipstrika, but I could potentially Toxic Stall it with my Miltank. So anyways, let's get to the battle. Okay, so my opponent's going to lead with Quagsire as I lead with my Miltank. I predict him to switch in his Nontoot, predicting my Toxic, so I go for the Body Slam, and it does nothing. He goes for a Toxic, poisons me. That's not too bad, because I do have the Heal Bell on my Miltank. So that's what I'm going to go for here. I'm going to Heal Bell as he ends up going for the Recover, trying to Recover Stall me. That's not really going to work. Anyways, pretty much, now I'm going to switch into my Zipstrika, hoping he doesn't go for the ground move or an attack in general. But he sends him Camera up, so I'm just going to switch out of my Mesprit, predicting the ground move. But he sets up his rocks, that's fine. You know, the only thing I have that takes super effective, or not super effective, the only thing that actually gets hit by him is Altaria. Well, now he sends in Natu as I try to set up my own rocks with it. Bounce back. He goes for a Toxic as I U-turn, and I forgot that he had a Natu, so I went for the Stealth Rocks, but whatever. Anyways, I send in Miltank to either Heal Bell or Body Slam. I end up deciding to go for the Body Slam to potentially paralyze it, but I obviously don't get it, and he sets up a Reflect. That's not too bad, because I can just stall out the Reflect turns. Now I'm going to Heal Bell to kind of stall out a Reflect turn and, you know, get rid of the poison, while he goes for a Roost, and really it's not too much of a problem, because again, the Reflect turns are just being stalled. I stuttered. But whatever, anyways, I Body Slam, does nothing after Reflect, still don't get the paralysis, and he just turns out into a Cradley. So I'm like, okay, I can Toxic you, because Toxic Cradley is kind of, you know, crippled a lot. But I missed my Toxic, and that's actually going to come into play later on in the match. And he goes for Toxic, and now he switches out not wanting to get Toxic into a Skunktank, as I just go for a Heal Bell to get rid of the Toxic, predicting either the Nontoot or the Skunktank. Now, luckily his Reflect wears off just in time. He's going to taunt, predicting me to maybe Milk Drink, I don't know. Well, not Milk Drink, but I just go for a Body Slam, do a pretty decent amount of damage, and get a Paralysis. Now, he sends in Cradley. Cradley is just going to sponge that Body Slam like a sponge. And, you know, yeah. Now I'm going to switch out here into my Sock to potentially take this thing out with a close combat. But he goes for the Toxic, and still not too bad, because, again, my Miltank had Bell. Sorry about that. Anyways, Miltank has Heal Bell, so I can pretty much, you know, just Heal Bell up later on. Anyways, I predict this switch into Nontoot or Quagsire and go to my Zipstrika. Ends up sending in Nontoot. I predict the Camera switch in here and go for an HP Grass. It does absolutely nothing, and I'm still predicting that ground move. So I switch out to my Mesprit, but he actually ends up just going for the Roar, which is pretty smart because, you know, Zipstrika can't do anything to Camerupt, and he roars me out into my Altaria. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to scout to see how much a Dragon Pulse will do, and it does absolutely nothing, and he is just going to keep shuffling my team around with that Roar. Anyways, he roars me into Zipstrika, and I'm still fearing the ground move, so I send in my Mesprit, and to potentially take it, but he just roars, making a smart play, knowing that Zipstrika can't do anything to Camerupt. He roars me into my Miltank, and I'm like, okay, this is good, because I can now get off residual damage on this thing with a Toxic. So I go for a Toxic, as he ends up roaring me out in my Zipstrika, and, you know, I'm like, okay, if he didn't go for the ground move twice, like 2 times already, he's not going to go for it this time, and I go for the Hidden Power Grass, and luckily he doesn't go for the ground move, and he roars me out into my Altaria, and it's like, okay, Altaria is taking too much damage from these rocks, so I'm going to go for a Roost just to get back up to full, to make sure, you know, Altaria is healthy for the next rock switching. So he roars me out back onto my Sock, and I'm like, okay, I can Earthquake this thing and take it out from this range after Toxic. So I'm going to go for an Earthquake, I'm going to take him out, and that's a dead Camera, so that's 1 threat down, you know, 5 more to go, I guess. But Now he sends in Swallow. I'm like, okay, I have Miltank for this thing, but I for some reason send in Mesprit. I don't even know why. But he just U-turns out, and that's fine. It doesn't do too much because my Mesprit is physically bulky. And he goes into Skunk Tank, and I'm thinking, okay, he might crunch or Sucker Punch, so I'm gonna try to set up my rocks. But he brings back in not to, and I'm like, damn, because I still don't get my rocks up, which is starting to get really annoying because those rocks will be very helpful. So he goes for Toxic, because I'm just gonna go for a U-turn and get out of there. And sorry about that. Anyways, I go into my Miltank, and Miltank is just going to hit this thing with body slams because that's really the only thing I can do. But he sends in Swallow, and he actually predicts my heal bell. That was a really nice play on his part because I could have body slammed and you know, maybe done a huge amount of damage to that Swallow. But he goes for Facade here. I go for Milk Drink just to scout out to see how much it does, and I'm like, okay, I can take another one and then live the next turn after lefties and then just heal bell up. But he gets a crit, and the turn I decide to go for the offensive. I get critted. So what can you do? Whatever, hacks is hacks. But from that damage, it looks like he only has 2 hits left in him, but he's going to make a smart play. U-turn out to make sure he doesn't take any more burn damage, and he goes into a Skunk Tank this time as I go into my Sock, and I'm just going to play it safe, go for the close combat here. If he sends in Nantu, I can just go for a Stonage, but actually go for a Taunt, predicting a Quagsire. I don't know, but whatever, I go for Stonage here. It ends up missing. It's very unfortunate. He gets off a Toxic, which, you know, it's kind of annoying, but not too bad. Well, actually it is bad because my heal brother's dead, so yeah. But regardless, now he switches in Quagsires. I predict that. Go for the close combat, get my own little bit of hacks, and get a crit there, which means I can solidly 2-hit KO this Quagsire. So pretty much I'm just going to keep playing it safe and go for a close combat just in case he decides to switch as I go for a Stone Edge, or not, just in case he decides to stay in as I go for a Stone Edge and he recovers. So he does end up switching into his Natu, and that close combat does absolutely nothing. So, you know, all the after turn effects, and now I'm going to go for Stone Edge, finally take this thing out. And I guess he predicted me to over-predict, I really don't know, or maybe he just wanted to leave it in to die, I don't know, but whatever. He sends in Swallow. So I'm like, okay, I can sacrifice my Altaria, and then send in my Mesprit and let that be fodder also, and it'll die to burn. So he's going to Facade take me out, and, you know, he's got 1 hit left in him, so I send him a Mesprit. And he's going to go for the U-turn, and because I am physically bulky, I live it, which means I am going to be able to get up my rocks this turn, which means the next time he brings in that Swallow, sorry about that, next time he brings in Swallow, it is going to die, and, you know, he sends in Quagsire. I just psychic that thing to kill it off, and, yeah. So, anyways, you know, he sends in Skunk Tank, and I'm like, okay, Mesprit did its job, it got up its rocks, it killed off a Quagsire, that's fine, just going to let it die. He goes for the Sucker Punch, and it's like, whatever. Now, I'm going to send in my Tauros, because I know I can take this thing out with an Earthquake, and, you know, he gets paralyzed on the Sucker Punch. I don't think it mattered too much, just because Tauros has got some really nice physical defense, you know, even with no investment, so I probably wouldn't be able to take it and kill him off. So he sends in Cradily, and this is where that Toxic miss kind of comes into play, because if I would have had the Toxic on this Cradily, with combination of Earthquake and Toxic, this Cradily would start getting worn down, you know, because these Earthquakes aren't doing absolutely nothing. He's just going to recover, and, yeah, you know, it's pretty much back to square one here because he's practically at full again. I'm going to Earthquake, still do nothing. If I had Toxic, the damage would start racking up. But what can you do? Hacks is hacks, right? Yeah, anyways, so here's a few turns of me going for an Earthquake, doing absolutely nothing, and my Tauros kind of just dying off. He's going to keep recovering, and, yeah, you know, Cradily at full HP. That's kind of a problem. So I send in Sock. I'm going to go for a close combat to try to take this thing out, and I sadly don't, and again, the Toxic damage that I would have gotten if I would have hit the Toxic would have pretty much killed him off. He would have sent in Swallow, and he would have died, but whatever, I got some Striker with that Overheat, so, you know, it should be game. Right, wrong, because I actually missed my Overheat, and he's going to get to recover, which is very unfortunate, you know, whatever. Hacks is hacks, you can't do anything about it. So I go for an Overheat. As you see there, it would have definitely killed, but from that range, it didn't. He's going to take me out with an Earthquake, and, yeah, it's very unfortunate. You know, the Overheat miss kind of cost me the game, but whatever, because if I would have hit the Overheat, Cradily would have died to Barn Swallow, and it would have died to Rocks. But whatever, you know, hacks is hacks, you can't do anything about it. Either way, that was a great game. Hope you all enjoyed, and yeah, you know, before I end this video, I want to say one more thing. Comment, rate, and subscribe, and if you could subscribe, that would be awesome of you, because, you know, it's my first upload, and if you subscribe to me, that would be great. But anyways, that's the game, and I'm just kind of waving my mouse around. And yeah, hope you all enjoyed, and yeah, peace out. See you all later.